This video describes one of the essential skills for our English 201 class, and that skill is adding the so what element to our claims. So any claims that we make in terms of either a thesis claim or a topic sentence claim needs to have the so what element. What I mean by that is that you don't just state an obvious fact, or you don't just describe something that happens in the story, but rather that you are actually making a claim, or you can think about it as an argument about the text. So I'd like to illustrate what I mean by the so what element by showing you guys some examples of some thesis claims and topic sentences that are lacking in the so what element. This first example, both authors effectively use character development and pacing to draw the reader as the characters make their discoveries and grow as a result of this. This example of a thesis, it lacks the so what element. We could ask, or we could even actually say, don't all authors use character development and pacing? I'm not quite sure what this writer meant by pacing, but don't all authors use character development to show us the discoveries the characters make? So this thesis actually is not providing a strong argument. First, it's saying something obvious about using character development to show us how the characters develop, which is what this is saying. So it's a little redundant. Actually, we would call that circular reasoning, where this statement just comes back in a circle. So we're not moving anywhere in terms of a thought process with this idea of using character development to show how characters discover and grow. The other problem with this is really unclear. Use pacing to draw the reader. So we need to fix those two things in order for this thesis statement to be successful. So what I've done here is I have highlighted some of the problems. Pacing was a problem. To draw was a little bit of an unclear choice there for describing what the writers are doing. And we talked about this problem with the circular reasoning. And then I would say that this part that I've highlighted in green here is just throwaway language. We don't even need that. Even if we didn't do anything else to this thesis claim, if we just put a period here and completely remove this, it would actually be an improvement on that thesis. So in terms of changing the critical thinking, though, in the thesis statement, the revision I put here is both authors effectively use character development and plot pacing to help the reader understand the subtle but crucial epiphanies experienced by their protagonists. So this thesis statement now describes in more specificity what this essay is going to be doing. It's going to show us how character development helps us understand the subtle differences that perhaps some readers aren't seeing, but this writer of this essay is going to help show us what these different character traits or different aspects of character development help us see these subtle epiphanies for both writers. So that's the first example of a thesis claim. The next one here, we have this thesis claim. Both Bobbie Ann Mason's Shiloh and Joyce Carol Oates' Where Are You Going, Where Have You Been? Use character to portray Norma Jean's and Connie's dreams of accomplishing happiness, but sadly face some of life's struggles in the process. This is an example of a first draft thesis claim from a former student, and I left it exactly as it was submitted. So you're going to see some grammatical errors here, and then we also have this really odd construction of the sentence. But sadly, face is coming back to the our characters, our subject of Bobbie Ann Mason and Joyce Carol Oates, sadly face. So it leaves a really kind of strange construction where it's shifted the subject, but it's unnamed here. So the sentence itself is pretty confusing. So in order to modify this sentence, then I've highlighted here again what are some of the problems with that original thesis. First and foremost, this is a question a lot of people have. Do I need to put the title of both stories in my thesis? You can do that. I think for most people, it's not a successful way to discuss your thesis. It just gets really wordy. So try it out. You don't need to put both of your authors and the titles of the stories in the thesis itself. You can do that in sentences before you place your thesis in the introduction. Okay, use character to portray Norma Jean's, we need an apostrophe there, and Connie's dreams of accomplishing happiness, but sadly face some life struggles in the process. So there's not really a clear argument here of what this writer is saying. That these writers or these authors are using character to show their dreams of accomplishing happiness and then their struggles. It seems pretty obvious and doesn't really offer a specific argument. So in terms of the revision, I revised this in two different ways. So the first way I revised it is I said both Norma Jean's and Connie's search for happiness is developed through symbol. And you're going to see that that's just a much cleaner, crisper argument than what we had originally here. We can imagine what this essay is going to be working on in the second claim. The other way I fixed this one is to say both authors symbolize their female protagonist's search for happiness. And again, we would have a better idea of where this essay is going if we're talking about how they symbolize through various ways their female protagonist's search for happiness. So these two examples were problems with the thesis statement. We can also have problems with the claims made in our topic sentences. So I have an example here. Faulkner writes in first-person narrative by way of using we as from the community as a whole. This topic sentence is not even making a claim. It's actually just stating a fact. This is factual data from the story that he uses the first person plural voice. So there's no argument here in that topic sentence. So it really needs a lot of revision. I had to actually kind of come up with an idea. And so here's what I did for the revision. There's the original, and here's our revision. Faulkner's plural first-person narrative, using we to represent the community as a whole, underscores the town's prejudice. So now the point of this paragraph has to talk about the town's prejudice and how that first-person narrative really helps show us the prejudice in the town. So that's our first example. Our second example is the reader sees tension between the characters when they try to fight the issues that conflict them. This is a really kind of basic statement. We see tension when people are arguing, and that's really not adding a whole lot of depth or critical thinking. It also doesn't really answer that so what? So why do we care? What are we learning from this analysis? So to revise that one, here is the original. And I brought in our literary device here so we can really kind of understand how those literary devices create meaning. Mason uses, I need to fix this. Mason's use of diction clues readers to the source of tension between Leroy and Norma Jean. So there we have a stronger argument in which this paragraph would talk about how Mason is using diction in very subtle ways to show us what is that tension between Leroy and Norma Jean. So this would make a much stronger analytical paragraph. Okay, so some quick takeaways when we're thinking about our topic sentences and thesis statement. On kind of a general note, cut language. Less is more. So by far when I'm working with students, the first thing that I do is I just start deleting words. So see if you can get rid of words and get rid of any extra clutter in your sentences to really make the arguments that you have crisp. The next thing I want you to do is imagine your reader. Might he or she ask, so what, after reading your claim? That's a big problem. So we want to make sure our claims are really clear and we understand, readers understand why we're making them. Be specific. Some of those examples we just went over showed really problems with specificity. And then just as a general tip, play with your verb choice. When you start moving verbs around and you start trying out different verbs, you'll really see how it changes the focus of the sentence. So I highly recommend that you play around with your verb choice as you're trying to revise your topic sentences. Okay, that's it. I hope this brief video helped you kind of think about writing your own thesis statements and topic sentences to make sure that they set you up for really great essays in the case of a thesis, and really great paragraphs in the case of a topic sentence. As always, email me if you have questions.